His touch used to feel like a promise, warm, patient, and knowing. Every time his fingers brushed against mine, something in me trembled, not from fear, but from a yearning I could never explain. His kisses were soft but daring, the kind that tasted of youth and danger. And his eyes, those gentle, romantic eyes, had the power to silence the storms inside me. I used to tell myself it was just a moment of weakness, just comfort in the wrong hands. But I was lying. Deep down, I knew I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to appreciate everyone who has subscribed to this channel. Your love, your time, and your presence mean more than you know. To all my returning viewers and those watching for the very first time, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are yet to subscribe, I truly cannot wait for you to hit that button, because your support is the fuel that keeps my heart, and this channel, alive. Please, do not forget to share your thoughts and feelings in the comment section as we journey through this story together. It started on a quiet spring evening in Ohio. The rain had just stopped falling, leaving behind that familiar earthy scent that always reminded me of renewal. But renewal was the last thing happening in my life. My marriage had become a hollow structure, two people living under the same roof, breathing the same air, yet miles apart in spirit. My husband, Michael, was everything a woman could ask for on paper: hardworking, respected, and dependable. But his heart had long moved somewhere else. I could feel it in the way he spoke to me, in the way his eyes avoided mine during dinner, in the silence that followed our goodnights. Our son, Jacob, was 17, bright, athletic, and full of life. He was the light of my existence, the one who unknowingly held me together. And then there was him, Ethan. Jacob's best friend since middle school. A boy I had watched grow into a man without realizing how much that fact alone would soon ruin me. Ethan had always been different from other boys. He was quiet, observant, almost too mature for his age. When he came around, he was always respectful, always smiling, always asking if I needed help. There was something about the way he noticed the small things, how he would ask if I had eaten, or how he would hand me a mug of tea when I looked tired, that pierced straight through the loneliness that had built up inside me for years. The night it all began, Michael was away on a business trip. Jacob was at a friend's house for the weekend, and the house was painfully silent. I was in the kitchen, lost in my thoughts, when I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Ethan, standing in the rain, holding his jacket close. His car had broken down a few blocks away, and he came to ask for help. His hair was drenched, his lips pale from the cold, and his voice carried that familiar warmth that made my chest tighten. I offered him a towel and some tea. He sat by the fireplace, shivering slightly, thanking me between gentle smiles. The fire crackled, filling the silence that neither of us dared to break. I told myself it was nothing, that he was just a boy needing warmth and safety. But something about the way he looked at me that night, like I was someone who mattered, started to unearth feelings I had buried long ago. As he sat there, the light of the fire danced across his face, revealing traces of innocence and manhood fighting for space. I could see the boy my son grew up with, but also the man he was becoming. And it terrified me, because for the first time in years, I felt seen. It was a moment that should have ended with a simple goodnight. But when his hand brushed against mine as he handed me the empty cup, my breath caught. The air grew thick, charged with something dangerous and unspoken. I pulled away quickly, pretending to tidy up the table, but my heart was racing so hard I could feel it in my throat. He stood to leave, but then paused at the door, turning to look at me with those eyes that held too many questions. And I, foolishly, recklessly, looked back. That 1 second of silence between us felt like a lifetime. I could almost hear my conscience screaming, yet I did nothing to stop what came next. When he stepped closer, I froze. I should have turned away. I should have reminded myself that I was his best friend's mother. But instead, I let him hold me. His arms wrapped around me with a gentleness that felt like confession. The world seemed to vanish as I let myself sink into him. Every suppressed emotion, loneliness, hunger, need, rushed to the surface in a flood I could no longer control. That night, I sinned. And I did it with eyes wide open. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains like judgment. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, trying to convince myself it was a mistake, that it would never happen again. But when Ethan came downstairs, his voice soft and unsure, calling me ma'am again like he used to, the guilt hit me harder than any word ever could. He left shortly after breakfast, and I promised myself it was over. I told myself I would bury it deep, pretend it never happened. But secrets have a way of haunting you when you least expect them. 2 days later, Jacob returned home. His laughter filled the house like it used to. For a moment, everything felt normal again, until he looked at me during dinner and said something that made my heart stop. "Mom," he said, smiling innocently, "Ethan told me something weird today. He said he wanted to tell you something important himself. Something he's been holding in for a long time." I froze. My spoon slipped from my hand, landing in the bowl with a sharp clatter. My son did not notice the way my heart was unraveling inside my chest. All I could think about was the fear, the shame, and the single question echoing in my mind. What did Ethan want to tell me, and why did it sound like the beginning of my undoing? For days, I could not look at my son without feeling the weight of my sin pressing down on me. Every time Jacob smiled, every time he called me mom, I felt the sting of shame burn deeper. It was not only guilt anymore, it was fear. Fear that the truth would surface, that the secret I had buried beneath layers of denial would one day be spoken out loud. And that day was closer than I wanted to believe. Ethan had not come around since that night. Normally, he would visit often, after school, during weekends, sometimes staying for dinner. But now, his absence was louder than his presence had ever been. Even Jacob began to notice. "Mom, Ethan's been acting weird," he said one morning while tying his shoelaces before school. "He barely talks to me anymore." Did something happen? I forced a smile that felt like a lie pressed against my skin. "I am sure he is just busy, honey. You know how teenagers can be." But the truth was, I was the reason he was avoiding our home. I could not blame him. What we had done was more than a mistake, it was a wound that neither of us knew how to tend to without reopening it. 3 weeks passed before I saw him again. I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart slowly through the aisles, trying to focus on simple things, milk, bread, vegetables, anything to keep my mind from wandering back to that night. Then I heard his voice. "Mrs. Turner?" I froze. My hands trembled around the handle of the cart as I turned to see him standing there. He looked older somehow, more withdrawn. His eyes held a weight I recognized too well. "Ethan," I whispered, barely holding his gaze. We stood there in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by strangers who had no idea that a storm was brewing between us. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "Please. Alone." Something in his tone told me it was not about apologies or closure. It was heavier. So I agreed. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That evening, when the house was empty again, he came over. I had not even changed out of my work clothes. My hands shook as I opened the door. The air between us was heavy, almost suffocating. He stood there, his jaw tight, his eyes red as if he had been fighting with himself for days. "Why did you do it?" he asked suddenly, his voice breaking through the silence. "Why did you let it happen?" His question hit me like a blade. I wanted to tell him I was lonely. I wanted to tell him I missed being touched like I mattered, being seen like I was alive. But none of those words could justify the pain I saw in his face. "Because I was weak," I said softly. "Because for one night, I wanted to feel something real." He exhaled, stepping closer. "It was real to me," he said. "It still is." I looked away. "Ethan, you have to forget it. You have to move on. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Please, do not destroy yourself over this." But he shook his head. "I cannot," he said. "Because I need you to know something. I love you." Those words were not sweet anymore, they were terrifying. They shattered the fragile silence between us, breaking whatever illusion of control I had left. I felt the world spin beneath my feet. Ethan, no, I said, stepping back. You cannot say that. You cannot feel that way about me. I already do, he said, his voice trembling. And I do not know how to stop. Tears welled up in my eyes. I had destroyed him without meaning to. I had awakened something inside him that neither of us could put back to sleep. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. You need to leave, I said, my voice barely steady. Please. For both our sakes. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. But just before stepping out, he turned back and said something that would haunt me for weeks. Jacob told me he is planning something for your birthday, he said. He wants me to help him. He said it is going to be a surprise, but I need to tell you something before that day comes. I swallowed hard. What is it? He looked down, his voice low, almost breaking. It is what I told you before. I am not taking it back. I meant it. And if Jacob ever finds out what happened between us, I will not deny it. After he left, I fell to my knees in the hallway, trembling. My body felt like it no longer belonged to me. I had lost control of the life I built, and I could see the walls closing in from every side. For the next few days, I lived in constant fear. I avoided both of them, my son and Ethan, pretending to be sick, locking myself in my room longer than usual, forcing a smile at dinner. But mothers know when their sons sense something is wrong. One night, Jacob knocked softly on my door. Mom? I forced my voice to sound normal. Yes, sweetheart? He stepped inside, holding a small gift bag. It is not your birthday yet, but I wanted to give you this early. I smiled faintly. You did not have to, Jacob. He laughed. I know, but I wanted to. You have been kind of distant lately. Ethan said you might just be tired, but I thought maybe this would cheer you up. My heart sank at the mention of Ethan's name. I reached for the bag with shaky hands. Inside was a framed picture, one I had never seen before. It was a photo of me, smiling, standing between the two of them during last year's summer cookout. We took this that day, he said. Ethan said it was one of your favorite pictures. My throat closed. He said that? Yeah, Jacob said, smiling. He said you looked really happy that day. I nodded slowly, blinking back tears. He could never know that the boy he called his brother had seen that same smile under a very different light. 2 nights later, Ethan called. His voice was heavy, distant. We need to talk, he said. It is important. I hesitated, but my silence only made him continue. Jacob is planning to come over with a few friends tomorrow night, he said. He wants to surprise you with something special. But before that happens, I need to tell you something in person. Please, do not ignore me. The fear returned, the same fear that had kept me awake for weeks. I knew what was coming. Whatever he wanted to say, it was not going to end quietly. When he arrived, his expression was pale and haunted. He stood in the doorway, his hands shaking slightly. I cannot live with it anymore, he said. Every time I see him, every time I hear him call you Mom, I hate myself more. I am going to tell him. My blood turned cold. No, I whispered. Ethan, please. You cannot. I have to, he said firmly. He deserves the truth. He deserves to know what happened. I stepped closer, desperate, trembling. If you tell him, you will destroy him. You will destroy everything. Do you understand what that would do to him? To us? He looked at me, his eyes wet. You think it has not already destroyed me? And then he said it, the shocking request that would rip my heart apart. If you will not let me tell him, then I need you to promise me something, he said. Promise me you will leave Michael. Promise me you will not pretend to love that man while I am still here. Because if you cannot, then I will tell Jacob everything myself. The room went silent. My breath caught in my chest. The boy who once looked at me with admiration was now standing before me as a man demanding love from a woman he could never have. I wanted to scream, to cry, to undo the moment I first let him in. But it was too late. The fire I had started was now raging out of control. And deep down, I knew, the moment I refused him, the truth would no longer belong to me. It would belong to whoever decided to speak it first. The night Ethan made that request, the air in the house felt too heavy to breathe. His words echoed in my head long after he left. "Promise me you will leave Michael, or I will tell Jacob everything." For hours, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the silent walls that had once witnessed my family's laughter. The guilt that had lived quietly inside me was now roaring like a beast. I knew what Ethan wanted was impossible. I could not leave my husband. I could not betray my son's love for his best friend any further. And yet, I could not stop the storm that had already begun. The following day, I tried to live as though nothing had happened. I cooked breakfast, washed dishes, smiled through conversations that felt empty. But deep down, I was counting every second, waiting for the sound of a truth I was not ready to face. That evening, Jacob walked through the door carrying a small cake box and a bunch of balloons. "Happy early birthday, Mom," he said cheerfully. Behind him, Ethan stood still, his face pale, his eyes unreadable. My heart stopped. Jacob motioned toward the kitchen. "We planned something small. I wanted it to be just the three of us. Like old times. Like old times." The words burned. There was no old time left to return to. As Jacob lit the candles, Ethan's hands trembled slightly. I watched him from across the table, praying silently for him to stay silent, to let the lie live a little longer. But his gaze never left mine. It was not anger I saw there, it was pain. We sang. We smiled. We laughed. For a few moments, everything felt almost normal. Then, just as I leaned forward to blow out the candles, Ethan spoke. "Jacob," he said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you." The flame flickered. My hands went cold. Jacob turned to him, laughing. "You can tell me later, man. Let Mom make a wish first." But Ethan did not laugh. His voice broke when he spoke again. "It's about your mom and me." The room froze. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator. My vision blurred as panic clawed its way up my throat. "Ethan," I said softly, "please." He shook his head. "I cannot keep it inside anymore. He deserves to know." Jacob's smile faded. Confusion twisted across his face. "What are you talking about?" I wanted to scream, to stop him, but my voice would not come. Ethan's voice cracked. "I love her, Jacob. I love your mother." The silence that followed felt like 1,000 knives. Jacob stared at him, then at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. He laughed nervously at first, as if waiting for someone to say it was a joke. But no one did. "Mom," he whispered. My heart shattered at the sound of that single word. I could not look at him, but my silence was already an answer. He stepped back, his breathing sharp and uneven. "No. No, that's not. You're lying." "Tell me he's lying, Mom." Tears blurred my vision. "Jacob, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" he shouted. His voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. "That you slept with my best friend? That you ruined everything?" Ethan tried to step closer, but Jacob shoved him back. "Get out," he roared. "Get out of my house." Ethan's voice trembled. "Jacob, I never meant to hurt you. Get out before I make you." Ethan left without another word, his footsteps fading into the night. The door slammed, leaving behind a silence that felt like death itself. Jacob turned toward me, his eyes filled with a pain I will never forget. "How could you?" he whispered. "You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to be better than this." I tried to reach for him, but he stepped back as if my touch burned. Then he left too, slamming his bedroom door so hard that the walls shook. For 3 days, he did not speak to me. He barely ate. He refused to go to school. Every attempt to apologize was met with silence. My husband, unaware of what had happened, returned from his trip and found our home filled with cold stares and unanswered questions. When he finally confronted me, I told him everything. Every detail. Every sin. Every sleepless night. I watched the man I once loved crumble right before my eyes. His face turned pale, his voice broke, and his silence was louder than any scream. He did not speak another word to me. That night, he packed his things and left. The next morning, Jacob was gone too. He had left a note on my kitchen counter. It read simply, "I cannot forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever." I fell to the floor, clutching that note as tears poured from my eyes. The weight of my sin had finally destroyed everything I ever loved. Weeks passed. The house grew emptier with every day. Ethan moved away after his parents found out what had happened. My husband filed for divorce. Jacob refused to answer my calls. I was left alone, with nothing but the echo of what I had done and the memory of a fire that should never have been lit. Sometimes, late at night, I replay that moment in my head, the night it all began. The touch, the kiss, the warmth I mistook for love. And I realize now that what I thought was comfort was really destruction disguised as affection. The truth is, sin never shows you its price until it is too late to pay in anything but heartbreak. I have lost everything, my son, my husband, my peace, and my name. And all because of a moment I thought would make me feel alive again. So, to everyone listening, if you are ever tempted to cross that line, to reach for someone or something that does not belong to you, remember this: you may gain a moment of warmth, but you will spend a lifetime burning for it. If this story touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comment section below. What would you have done in my place? Would you confess, or would you live with the secret forever? Your words, your engagement, your reflections, they keep this channel alive and give stories like this one their purpose. Do not forget to subscribe, to like, and to share this story if it spoke to your soul. And as you do, I leave you with one question to carry in your heart tonight. When love becomes sin, does forgiveness still have a place, or should some truths remain buried forever?